City of Stevens Point Board of Public Works Committee meeting, recorded March 8, 2021.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chairperson Shore. I will call the Public Works meeting to order at 7:03. Trish, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Mayor Wiesa.
Here.
Jeremy Slowinski.
Here.
Alder Kneebone.
Here.
Corey Laddick.
Here.
Sean Morrow.
Here.
Tori Jennings.
Here.
Ian Makira Zarazua.
Here.
Excellent. Everyone is in attendance. We will move on to the director's report. Director?
Just a couple of things on the 2021 street improvement project. As I try to bring to everyone's attention, just to let you know, there will be a preliminary resolution brought forward next week at the Common Council meeting. That would be for the installation of sanitary laterals and some sidewalk in areas that don't currently have sidewalks. So just a heads up with that. And then the other item I'd identified is the Plover River Crossing Trail. Just wanted to let everyone know, as I stated there, is the geotechnical work was completed. We did run into some challenges with the weather. This winter wasn't the winter we were hoping for as far as getting access down into the river area. But with a few modifications and a little bit of effort, Newman Testing was able to get in there and complete the borings that they needed to do. So we are moving full steam ahead on that project, thanks to, I guess, maybe a little bit of luck. So someone's looking out for us. So that's all I had to report on those.
Thank you, Director. And I'm not sure if you can answer this, but I bet somebody else on the committee might be able to. With the Plover River Crossing Trail, I understand that there is, because this is going to be predominantly through donations or intermunicipal government funds, there's a fund open now at the Community Foundation. Is that correct? Does anybody know?
That's my understanding, but I don't know the specifics of that to say any more.
Is there anyone on the committee or attending the meeting that might be able to give the public some information if they wanted to donate to this project?
Yes, there is a community foundation fund, and anyone could, I don't have the address in front of me, but they could Google the community foundation and just Google Plover River Crossing, and they'll be able to find it. So, and Steve Menzel is the contact person for the committee.
Excellent. Thank you, Alder Jennings. So anybody who wants to donate to this project could just go on the Community Foundation website and search for the fund for the Plover River Crossing. We would appreciate that. Great. Director, do you want to touch on the update on Business 51? I know it's listed as item number 2, but before we accept the director's report, because that's kind of part of it, isn't it?
Well, I guess it could be rolled up into that. We do have Amy Canfield here from AECom. She's project manager to just kind of give a summary of where we're at.
I tell you what, let's do them separately then. I would look for a motion to accept the director's report and place it on file.
Oh,
so moved.
Tomorrow, so moved.
Motion by Morrow, second by Slowinski. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor, please unmute yourself and signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Unmute yourself and signify by saying nay. By unanimous consent, the director's report is approved. Now, Director Badoon, I'll turn it over so you can introduce Amy.
All right. Yeah, just give us an update on where we're at. Hopefully everyone is aware that we are in the middle of the public involvement. We're still looking for comment related to that. There's plenty of information to be found on our website. And Amy's here just to give us a kind of an overview of how that's gone, where we're at, and hopefully to add some energy into it and get you to, if you haven't yet, to give us your comments and take some time to look at what we have there. So Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Badoon. So just wanted to bring everybody up to speed in case they weren't in the know about where we're at with Business 51. We do have our second round of public involvement ongoing right now. So last week on March 2nd, we launched a bunch of new information onto the project website, which you can find by just going to you can Google Business 51 Stevens Point. It's the first thing that comes up. You click on the public meeting number 2 link on that website, and there is a narrated presentation. There are several exhibits showing the south, central, and north segments of Business 51, the design alternatives. as well as some drive-through animation videos that are a couple minutes long each of each segment that you can watch there too. And also on that website, we have a comment form. It's more open comment style. We did another survey earlier in the project that was, you know, like click the button you want for the various answers. This one is an open format. So we're looking for impact or input on what people think of not only the alternatives proposed for the various segments, in addition to like some of the spots, there's like specific options, like at Rice Street, we have more than one option, at Patch Street, at 4th Avenue. And we're looking specifically to see what people think of those options that are presented there. So when we held the Q&A sessions last week, we had 3 virtual Q&A sessions. They were again, like a Q&A style where we had a moderator, people could type their comments in the chat and then we answered them live. Between the 3 sessions, we had about 75 to 80 members of the public that attended those sessions. And so far as of today, there's about 250 presentation views on the website too. And we are looking to try and drive some more people to the comment form. So far, we've got in the range of 50-ish like written comments in there, which I'd love to see many more. The people who have provided comments so far, though, have really done a nice job. Like you can tell that they have reviewed the exhibits. They are providing, you know, detailed comments on what they like in the various areas of the corridor. So it's been great to read through that and see that there too. So to help drive more people to that comment form, we're actually planning tomorrow should go up, and there'll be another one later this week on Saturday, a post on the city's Facebook and Twitter pages that have direct links to get there. I think some people are having a hard time finding it on the website because it's kind of like buried in the project website, you know, there too, and can be a little cumbersome to find. So we're going to put that right out there so you can just click right on it to get to it. And for, you know, those older people are on this call today too, if you guys see that and you can share that with your constituents, that'd be great as well, because it's going to be a very simple link for them to find and follow to get those comments in. And then with that comment form too, it'll say this in the post, but it is available until this Sunday, March 14th. So you really want to encourage people to get on there this week and leave their thoughts. And, you know, like I said, some of the questions, you know, focus on by segment, you know, what do you think of the alternatives? Do you prefer a 4-lane? Do you like the 2-lane? What do you think of the various intersection options? You know, I'd say so far from the general public at this moment, you know, we're seeing a little more preference for the 4-lane alternative with some fear of change that's coming in there too. So we're also working on some more talking points and social media outreach that can help people kind of understand, again, you know, where these proposals are coming from and what type of benefits that they would have for the corridor, you know, if there were an option that had fewer lanes. On the intersection side, at 4th Avenue, there is a roundabout and a signalized intersection option. I'd say we're seeing a little more favorable comments for the roundabout at this point in time. And at Patch Street and Rice Street, we're proposing a couple options, one that keeps those intersections where they're at, and another one which realigns them and tries to line up Rice and Whiting to make one intersection. And at Patch tries to line up Patch and Francis to make one intersection. And those proposals right now via the comment form are receiving a little more favorability than the option to leave them as is. But again, if you know, we only have, you know, 50-ish comments, that is definitely not everybody in Stevens Point. So again, encourage, you know, people to get out there and leave their, you know, thoughts and opinions on there too, so that we can really get good representation from all walks of life. So I think with that, you know, if anybody has any questions too, I mean, maybe I'll take one more second. After this, where we're going next is we're going to be reviewing these comments. We have another stakeholders meeting that's going to be scheduled in April. We hope to, at this point, be talking to our stakeholders about recommended alternatives, you know, laying out ideas and getting their input on what we should be recommending to you guys, as well as then you would take on to the Common Council and go to the public again in May timeframe to share with them thoughts on recommendations. So I'll pause there because I see a hand up with a question.
Thank you, Amy. And I've got some comments too, but we'll call on President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Canfield. I had a lot of contact after this, many of them from people who support lane reductions and were not entirely pleased with presentations of this last week. They felt that they were canned, for lack of a better term. Is there a reason in the survey questions we haven't asked, do you believe fair and equitable access to Business 51 is important? The questions are phrased as such that it tees up a negative connotation. And then the other thing is, of course, we've removed from the budget the money for land acquisition. And yet you've proceeded with options at this point that would gobble up properties belonging to businesses paying taxes and homes paying taxes. So I have to say that, you know, and then the other group that I heard from who are those who oppose the entire project, and you've affirmed their fears. So that is the feedback I got. And working with my constituents to help them better access the information, the city does need to do a better job. I agree with you, Ms. Canfield. It's hard to find the information. It's kind of buried. So thank you.
Thank you, President Johnson. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a commitment to put that at the top of the city webpage and pin it there going forward, at least through Sunday. So anyone who has comments can certainly reach us through the stevenspoint.com website, and I will make sure that that link is pinned to the top. I know Community TV is listening, so they can get that taken care of probably even before tomorrow morning. So we can make sure that everybody who wants to have access to that survey and feedback form has access to that. I am concerned, however, on a couple of things that were mentioned here. Amy, you mentioned that you thought that the keeping it 4 lanes was due to a fear of change. I would caution us to not speculate on what people's opinions are or where they come from. The other concern I have is, quite frankly, and is President Johnson's comments from her feedback, where we need to educate more about the lane reduction because that's not well received in the comments. But then when we say that the comments have positive things about a roundabout, we're saying, no, we don't want that. So I want to be careful, especially with the people on this call. None of the alders are traffic engineers. I am not a traffic engineer. And when we solicit public input, we want to make sure that that is public input, not the way we want it narrated, not the way we want to phrase the question so we can make it sound like this is what we should do. We want genuine public input. And then as a last note to members of the public, you may not get your way. We're taking everything into consideration. If you're fond of the current 4-lane, that's great, but we have an opportunity here now to make that road safer. There are some intersections on this road that have higher than average incidents. If there's something that we can do to make it safer, we owe it to everyone to explore it. So it shouldn't be what I want, or what AECOM wants, or what Director Badoun wants, or what any alderperson wants, or what any one citizen wants. Our job is to try and make the best design that we possibly can. And maybe that isn't going to, I can guarantee you that's not going to make everyone happy. But I want to be careful that when we solicit public input, it's the public's input, not the way we phrase the question or what we think it should be and impose that on them. Pure, unadulterated public input. And that's what we should be getting. And as I said, we will make sure to pin that link at the top of our webpage at stevenspoint.com beginning tomorrow morning. Are there any other comments or questions for Ms. Canfield or Director Badoun in this regard for Business 51?
I guess this is Alder Slowinski. I kind of want to piggyback on what the mayor had stated, as well as President Johnson. I mean, I know that this is kind of just an update discussion, but I really want us to be careful that as we move forward with this project, you know, that like Mayor had stated, that we want to make this corridor as safe as we possibly can. This is our only opportunity. You know, this road is going to be around for 75, 100 years from now, hopefully. And, I just want to make sure that we're doing this right. And the comment that was made by President Johnson, that, why are we still providing options of possibly purchasing some land or acquisition of some businesses? If that's what it takes to make this safe, I would hope that we do that, and that we completely eliminate it because we don't want to acquire. And I'm specifically talking about the intersection by Patch and Francis, as well as Rice and Whiting Avenue, and also the whole discussion with Forest. So I just wanted to provide my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other alders with comments or questions? I guess we should try and limit it to questions for Director Badoon or AECom, because everybody here has the option to provide their comments through the website. Comptroller Treasurer Laddick.
Yeah, so I just have, one question. Of course, as far as financing this project and for the city to be able to afford it, it's going to be really critical that we're able to get grant funding for it. And I know that in the federal stimulus bill, there's potentially some money for infrastructure, but I just kind of wanted to see if there were any thoughts on that or any other grant opportunities, because I think that is going to be really critical for being able to pay for this.
Thank you. And I know the director is aware of it. I assume AECom has been working on it. I can tell you that I personally have been working with a representative from the Department of Revenue, specifically on those grants, but on some other things as well. And I've been in contact with Transportation Secretary Thompson in that regard too, to let them know how important this is to our community and to all of central Wisconsin, really. So rest assured, we will absolutely be exploring every possible avenue for transportation aid and grants, which is still taxpayer money, but we need to make sure that we're getting our equitable share of that as it relates to transportation. So I'm hoping to have the governor's ear. I'm going down to Madison tomorrow. Any other comments? Okay, seeing and hearing none. If you have additional comments, maybe it comes to you later tonight or tomorrow morning or even 5 days from now. You can reach out through the website. And as I said, we'll have that pinned to the top of the stevenspoint.com webpage and mobile app. Or you could certainly submit your comments in writing. You can send them either to my office and I'll get them to Director Badoon, or you can send them directly to the Department of Public Works here at the city. Thank you, Ms. Canfield. Director, item number 3 is to award the bituminous patching project to American Asphalt of Wisconsin out of Mosinee in an amount not to exceed $99,730.76. Give us a rundown of what that is.
Sure. Every year we put out a contract for patching. Much of it is related to utility projects that always happen when they have to adjust manholes or catch basins and whatnot, as well as some of the city work that we always do when we have a small repair that needs to be made. And every year we get the single bid from American Asphalt that goes along with that. They're really the only game in town. So this year, once again, we went through the motions. They submitted a bid. It's about 5% higher than last year, but still within our engineer's estimate, close to it. So we recommend approval of that contract to award to American Asphalt.
Thank you, Director. And I just want to be clear, because 'tis the season. This is not for our patch hole and our pothole and crack filling. We do that internally, and we're doing that now. This is separate from those potholes and crack filling that we do.
That is correct.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or a motion from a committee member?
This is Alder Slowiński. I will move to award the bituminous patching project to American Asphalt of Wisconsin out of Mosinee in the amount not to exceed $99,730.76.
Thank you. Do we have a second there?
This is Alder Morrow. I second it.
Thank you, Alder Morrow. I saw you, Alder Nebo, and maybe you get it in next time. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Committee members, please unmute yourself. If you're in favor of awarding this, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that's approved. Item number 2 is to award the curb, gutter, and sidewalk project to Farner Asphalt Sealers out of Plover in an amount not to exceed $53,328.95. Director, anything to add here?
I think it was all summarized in the memo. It was a good year for us with 5 bidders, so very competitive, and I think it reflects in the price that we're seeing.
Thank you. From the committee members, questions, comments, or Alder Kneebone, perhaps a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve that bid. Is there a second?
All tomorrow, I second.
Thank you, Alder Morrow. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, please unmute yourselves, committee members, and signify, or all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And that is unanimously approved. Item number 5 is to accept the ordinance amendments in section 9.05 as it relates to parking. Seems like we're talking about this every month, but we're cleaning up the books and making changes that better the community. Director.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Recently, in fact, we've been in this. You've probably seen as a very similar map over the last couple of months, and we did find a couple more that we happened to miss the first time. There are plenty of them out there. So just some further cleaning up in the downtown area.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or a motion?
So moved. Alder Slowinski.
Slowinski moves to approve. Is there a second?
Zarazua, second.
Seconded by Zarazua. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 6 is to enter an agreement with Wisconsin Department of Transportation for the winter maintenance responsibilities for the sidewalk related to the US Highway 10 bridge over I-39. Director, hopefully we won't have to do any snow removal till at least next season.
Right. Well, the bridge isn't planning to be redecked until 22, so we've got a little bit of time. But yes, this is something that had come up about a year ago, and I know we had some reservations at the time and presented it there to this body, and it sent it back then to the DOT with those comments we had. And I have to admit, it's been a little bit silent there until recently. Director Kramer and I had a meeting with them a little over a month ago, and they have taken to heart everything that we had given to them for comments. All of our design sort of maintenance related comments we had to them, I believe they've addressed all of them. And so what we were otherwise, concerned about before, as far as the efficiency with which we could do it and some of the challenges related to it, they've taken care of in their design, right up to the point where they've placed room for a truck to park within the median that could be loaded with snow if in the event that the snow piles up enough to get moved off. So they really did think through a lot of the things we had concerns with. In addition to that, one of the things that I wrote in the memo that they're talking about is to reduce some of our other maintenance issues, that being in some of the medians where otherwise they would typically be, and it's pretty typical with other construction efforts, areas where due to the cost of concrete, they would put asphalt in them. As we know, the asphalt gets dry and brittle and grass dries up and stuff. Concrete is more durable and longer lasting. And they have agreed to, replace out the asphalt portion at their expense with concrete, which should therefore offset a little bit on the maintenance, overall maintenance to the area that we would be responsible for, a little more winter maintenance to offset with some of the summer maintenance that we might see. So I think overall it's a good deal for us, even to the fact that I did ask and they were agreeable to it. If we wanted to adding, some sort of colored concrete there for a more aesthetic, that they're also agreeable to that as well. So that's what we others have. I think after Director Kramer, I don't know if he would want to speak if he's on here anymore, but I believe, he and I said we talked about it, and I think we're agreeable to what they presented is fair. And I think it's something that we could take on. We're working more and more in the area with additional trail and other stuff we're putting in on the east side. So I think it actually works in rather well to what we do. Probably be crossing the bridge anyways, as I stated in the memo. So why not be, more productive while we're doing so?
Thank you, Director. And I'm assuming that they threw out the fine print that says we'll clear the snow on the bridge if you pay for Business 51. And they must have caught that.
It must not have.
Director Kramer, do you have anything to add? I think we're good. I don't see him acknowledging that, so I think we're probably okay. Comments, questions, or a motion?
A motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Jennings. Is there a second?
Arizua, I'll second.
Arizua seconds. Further discussion?
I have a comment. I know we don't have any control over the design, but putting a 10-foot wide sidewalk down the middle of that bridge just seems really strange. I think it's going to be a challenge for the city to keep that clear, but if y'all think you can do it, I'll be supportive. But in my mind, the sighting of that pathway down the middle of 4 lanes of traffic just makes the Plover River crossing an even nicer option.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other comments? The motion is to approve entering into the agreement with DOT. If you're in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Seeing and hearing none, that is approved. And item number 7 is a compilation of many hours of work by many people. And I am going to be turning it over to Chief Zenner. Okay, well, there he is. He keeps moving around. I have to allow him to share. So I'm going to make him the host, and we are going to get a presentation on the work that was done by our, we'll call it the parking group. As you probably remember, council and this committee directed staff to work together to find a working option for overnight parking. And what you are about to see is the final product of that that work. So Tom, you are now Chief Zenner, you are now the host. If you can share your screen and we can go through the PowerPoint. And then you'll have to give me back the host capability at some point.
Okay. Well, as we have here, I got a PowerPoint that I put together fairly quickly here at the end concerning overnight parking. This has been a significant issue the last few years, and we've all witnessed some clearly defined opinions, including even from our city staff. But as we stand now, this is our city ordinance for overnight parking. Individuals that worked on this were from the Department of Public Works, Department of Community Development, Police Department. Everyone other than Lindsay and Mike are available tonight. So if you have any questions, I know Lieutenant Dana Williams, who heads our enforcement efforts, has checked on. But assessment considerations concerning our overnight parking. The initial meeting identified particular areas, played a significant part for our considerations moving forward. First issue that we addressed, current and future development needs. Obviously, our city is growing, and there's certain areas within the city that has limited parking, and all of us agreed moving forward. This is something that we need to consider if overnight parking is going to be an issue that we need to expand upon. Road maintenance and safety. These are issues that you've heard, I know from me, quite frequently in the past. Scott Baduna has addressed this issue. We need to have overnight parking that allows for road maintenance and also for the safety of vehicle traffic. Many of these roads that we're talking about are from quite a while ago. They're fairly narrow. We do have some limitations on that street where overnight parking could be a concern. Clear and consistent protocols within the ordinance, and this is something Lieutenant Williams could address. Currently, our overnight parking has 2 steps. One, odd even requirements, plus on top of that, a permit system requiring a $3 permit per night. That's created some issues, in particular complaints that we received, and appeals where, such as one individual thought they buy an overnight permit, they did not know there was extra requirements on an odd even, and the opposite being true from that. But lastly, most importantly, community perspective. We have all heard at previous committees and from my office and other departments' offices, we have individuals within our community that want more restrictive measures on overnight parking. The less the better. We obviously have individuals within our community that would like to see more relaxed overnight restrictions, and that comes into some of our areas again where we are a growing community. And I've had conversations with community members and alders where this really doesn't affect them. They're in areas where overnight parking really hasn't been an issue, and as we have those discussions moving forward, we need to educate too on the outskirts. Current exemptions to our overnight restrictions, we have 5 of them. The one that we're looking at in particular, overnight parking by permit. This is what our group really focused on moving forward. Current permit process, it's $3 a night. We talked about this a bit already. You can buy a permit up to 3 consecutive nights. Other than that, you're going to have to go back into the permit process and reorder. Some of these issues that pop up in number 3, we talked about where the appeals process and complaints that we're receiving is the 2 requirements, odd even streets and buying the permit. The odd even parking is something consistent with other communities. Added on top of the permit is something that we notice is a bit different. But obviously, snow emergencies, we haven't been selling permits, and our requirements are for current registrations and vehicles must be operable. Our group had some considerations moving forward. Number 1, we've seen a distinct need for a downtown business district zone, and I do have a map that we'll be showing here. This is something Lindsay, I'm going to kill this name, McClintock from Public Works. I think she had put together probably 10 maps of the downtown area, trying to address the concerns that we had through each of our departments. Really what went into this to ensure where we have development, that parking opportunities are there. However, in the downtown area, we have some concerns for street safety and clearing of the parking lots and the streets. But we also didn't want to include residential areas. So if you notice up towards Main Street to Rogers to Clark Street, we start getting into, even though that I believe has some property belonging to Associated Bank, we start getting into single family homes or private homes. We really wanted to limit this area to the downtown business area and city parking lots, and also down to Piffner Park. These are issues that we've had in the past with overnight parking. And we can come back to this map. Basically, these are the considerations we addressed for the downtown district zone. 1, no parking allowed on the city streets or public square. This really isn't different than what we already have in place. What we did have discussions with, and I know Ryan talked to the business owners downtown business district. So if he had some any questions that could be directed to him on this, but the overnight parking allowed in the downtown area, but we'd limit it to parking lots 7, 12, and 16. And we would continue with the $3 per night. We do have some restriction, our current permit practices, long-term parking in lot 12 and on lot 7. But coming up with this consideration, we didn't see any concerns of overlap. Lot 12 also has some restrictions concerning 2-hour zones, but that's during the day. Kiosks for overnight parking would be placed in lot 12 and lot 16. Currently, we have a kiosk already in lot 16. Lot 12, we would need to add a kiosk. We do have kiosks, though, that are in storage. There would not be an extra cost for the purchase of the kiosk, but obviously the kiosks do have a monthly cost that would be a minimal upgrade per month. Remaining permit parking system and parking regulations would remain in place. As I said, we do have a long-term parking permits in the downtown area at multiple parking lots. Those would remain in place, and we don't see a situation where this consideration would create a conflict. Again, this is the downtown map. You can see my mouse, lot 16. That lot is located by Great Lakes and Cobblestone. Lot 12 is directly by the library. And again, lot 12 has current parking restrictions and permits in it. Again, no conflict that we're seeing. Lot 7 is down by Ruby's.
Thank you very, very much.
Out of those two, lot 7, initially we had discussions of putting a kiosk there. However, if we move forward with this, lot 12 is more than close enough to address that issue, and it would be less impact on a monthly maintenance. For the remaining part of the city, just for, I guess, just to call it a residential zone, obviously there's some business in there, but to create a separation between zones. Currently, we have a parking restriction odd even side of the street based on corresponding calendar date. Our proposal would be restriction remains in place. As we said earlier, there's a $3 permit also required per night. Our recommendation, our proposal would be eliminate this permit requirement. Currently, our fine amount for overnight parking is $15. Our recommendation would be to increase this to $25 per night. The reason for this, if there's one thing I'm confident about, we're going to have increased vehicle traffic parked on the roadway. If this was to come to pass, it would be obviously a big concern if we're having vehicles parked on both sides of the street. If we go to an odd even, it's imperative that we have vehicles or people follow the ordinance, in particular on several of our streets on the north side of town. We do have restrictions that some have no parking on one side of the street. However, we do have some that allow parking on both sides. If we have vehicles parking on both sides during the night, there is some concerns for security issues, safety issues with vehicle traffic, and we do have pedestrians in that area. So therefore, we would be looking to raise that final amount to $25. Lastly, registration current vehicles are operable. We will keep that in place. One concern that has been addressed is, and I briefly discussed that, we have streets limiting on-street parking to one side. Streets that come to mind, Ellis Street, I know is that way, Briggs, College, a couple on the north side of town, Church Street. These streets do not allow parking, or it's restricted on one side of the street. Our recommendation moving forward would not create an exemption for that. Current parking restrictions limiting available overnight parking could be reviewed on a case by case, but the concern of essentially having parking every night on one side of the street or removing the no parking is not a consideration that we discussed moving forward. One part to identify available overnight parking. How can we define that? We discussed this at length. The decision we came up would be a walking distance of 1 block. If we have these areas where there's restrictions that is limiting available overnight parking, we could bring that forward to Director Badoon or the police department, and that's something that we could address moving forward. But at this point, several of these streets had restrictions put in for a reason. To go through them one case by case right now, that would be something that we would have to look at in the future. I went through that pretty fast. I can go back through the steps or the map, but we're open for questions.
Chief, I'm going to need you to turn control back over to me, please.
Okay.
You getting there?
I'm trying.
Yeah, go to my picture in the upper right-hand corner. There you go. That should do it. And yep, I think we're good. Alder Jennings, comments?
I just had a question, clarifying question.
Okay.
I got a little bit confused on the last bit. So streets that are too narrow for parking on both sides, you brought up Ellis Street, so I'll use that as an example. I understand you to say those will be considered on a case-by-case basis moving forward, or the sort of restrictions that already exist will remain. So the street is not wide enough for all that parking. It's going to remain the way it is. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Our discussions that we had on that topic were to keep the current restrictions in place. I know it has been addressed in the past of either allowing overnight parking on one side of the street continuously, or ultimately removing that. As we're going to have an overnight parking, they're going to be parked on one side or the other. There was just too many concerns that came up with that, or future problems, without really identifying a particular street to identify, why that restriction was put in place to begin with. To do a generalized exemption would be inappropriate.
Okay, President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief Zenner. Question, you were referring to Director Badoon a couple of times, and maybe I missed this because I actually had kind of a coughing fit and I didn't catch everything you were saying at the beginning. Was Director Karnowski also involved? Because while this is certainly law enforcement, it is certainly infrastructure, which is public works, but this is about community development too. And I guess I would love to hear from Director Karnowski.
Yes, Ryan was very involved in this process.
Yeah, so just a quick overview from the community development aspect. When we look at what properties and what developments are bringing the most tax revenue in, when we have buildings on properties and instead of parking lots, there's more tax revenue, property tax revenue coming in. And recognizing that the community is shifting more towards higher density development, the Lullaby site being a prime example where you're at about 50 units an acre, higher density typically translates to higher property tax revenue, but also recognizing that if we can shift some of the burden of vehicular parking from that physical property onto the streets themselves, you utilize more or less a liability, that being the street right of way and the street itself, for something other than just a travel lane. You can use it for on-street parking, overnight parking as well. So, my perspective was very much the Strong Towns, Chuck Marone perspective that we can get more property tax revenue if we don't have these vast parking lots in our developments, but rather have buildings that are occupied and are active, either housing, mixed use, commercial, things of that nature.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate that, and I concur with that assessment.
Anything else, President? No?
Not right now. I seem to have found my breath, so I'm good.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, Alderperson Kneebone.
First, I would like to thank all of you that were involved in doing this review and putting together what I think is a really rational approach. When I've been a proponent of free overnight parking, never was it an intention to supersede parking restrictions that are already in place. So roads that you can't park on one side should stay that way. And I think this proposal looks into that. It's something that could always be addressed later down the road. But I think this gives a lot of relief to a lot of people in my district that have an issue with not enough parking where they live, and property size restrictions make it unable for them to have any more parking area. It utilizes the roads in a better way, and I think the increase in the price of a parking ticket is fair. I think we were paying $50 in Dallas 30 years ago. So I think 25 is a pretty fair price now for Stevens Point. So I think this is a great proposal. And again, thank you very much for all the effort that went into this. I really commend staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Zarazua.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work that you've all put into this. I know we've talked about this a few times over the time that I've been on council. I'm just wondering, so for the overnight parking, would that time frame stay the same of it being from 2:30 a.m. to 6 a.m.?
Our recommendation would be it would stay the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nancy Roppy.
What I didn't hear with this proposal is how you plan to address people who are going to park their construction trailers, their boats, all of those kind of non-vehicle items on the street. If it's attached to a passenger vehicle and they get a permit, is that going to be subject to a $25 fine? I mean, I know you guys said that you put a lot of work into this, but I really find that hard to believe, because basically all you did was remove the $3 permit fee and increase the $25 fine. And when you say a 1 block distance, what exactly is a 1 block distance? I guarantee you, in my neighborhood, we're going to have nothing but problems, because the landlords are going to pile all of the cars that they can't put on their properties into the streets. And the snow removal is going to be a nightmare. So I don't think you looked at it from the perspective that I have brought to more than 7 meetings with photographic evidence of all of the problems that this is going to cause. And finally, who will I call when I have problems if this goes through? When there's a vehicle that's abandoned, which I have encountered, sitting in front of my property, no permit, you can be putting fines on it endlessly. How is that getting removed? And whose name and number can I call at 3 a.m. when I'm having a problem? That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. For problems like that, if it's an emergency, by all means, you can dial 911. You can call the non-emergency number at dispatch if it's not an emergency, and our officers will check it out. You also have the ability to contact your alderperson if it is of a nature that is not immediate and in need of immediate attention. Chief Zenner, did you want to try to address any of the other questions? I know there was quite a flurry of them, but I assure you, we took a lot of those questions into consideration. We may not have touched on them, and I apologize for that. But non-motorized vehicles, for example, is something that we did discuss. Chief Zenner, I'll turn it back over to you or Lieutenant Williams.
Sure. As we got in talking about abandoned vehicles, we still have a process in place of 3 citations that are issued on a vehicle parked on the street, and we can pursue that as an abandoned vehicle. There are requirements odd even that if a vehicle would be abandoned on the street, I'm confident we still have the language within the ordinance that we'd be able to follow up on those particular calls. We do require current registration on vehicles. We won't have boats or trailers left on there. I know that we have addressed those complaints in the past. Lieutenant Williams, you want to address some of those complaints that come in and how we handle those?
Sure. Yeah, we've had some this past year, and usually what I'll do is try and make contact with the owner, whether by phone or in person, and request to have them move them, and usually have gotten compliance. Otherwise, we do ticket those vehicles if they are left on the road.
Thank you. And Attorney Beveridge, you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a really quick note about abandoned vehicles. That is, like the chief mentioned, governed by a different section of ordinance, but also you bring in different sections of state law when you start talking about actual abandonment of a vehicle or towing it away or anything like that. Some of the vehicle title law stuff gets involved. So it's a little bit of a different bit of subject matter.
Thank you very much. Chief Zenner, let me put a hypothetical to you. I own a property. I have 16 cars. I only have room for 6 in my driveway, so 10 are going to get put on the street. I still have to move them every other night, or every night, really, one side or the other. And if parking isn't allowed on that section of road, I have to move them even further. So it's not like I could just park a vehicle in front of my house and leave it there for 4 days without getting ticketed or towed. Is that correct?
Correct. There was some terminology that we discussed at length. Available parking and convenient parking were issues that came up, and that more addressed when we have restrictions on one side of the street, and where we came to identify a 1 block, and that would be a 1 block face if we wanted to define a distance an individual would have to walk. So yes, you're not going to be having your vehicle parked on the street consistently or continuously for a week. It obviously, you still need to follow the odd even recommendation.
Thank you. And one other note that we didn't touch on, but again, I assure you it was discussed, are things like snow emergencies, where those restrictions would be in place regardless of what side of the street you were on. In the event of an emergency declaration, we wouldn't allow parking on any city street or a section. For example, if the water utility needed to replace a main, we could prohibit parking on a certain section of street if needed. All of those emergency powers would still remain in effect. All existing ordinances regarding parking restrictions and no parking zones would still remain in effect. Handicap accessible or ADA accessible spots would still follow all of the state and federal guidelines. So none of those things would be changed. We didn't bring them up, but of course we did talk about them. Are there any other comments or questions? I'm sorry, I heard somebody say something. Did I miss something? No. All right, any other comments or questions? If not, the intention would be to move this forward into putting it into ordinance form and bring it back to this body and subsequently council for consideration.
Mayor, I would make that motion.
We actually don't need a motion.
I was going to say,
we don't need a motion. This is input.
Okay.
This is the culmination of work.
Good.
That your city staff did on your behalf to come up with a proposal. The proposal is now, well, has been presented, and we're looking for thoughts. If generally it seems like most people are okay with this. There may be some tweaks and changes that need to be done, but unless we have any objections, we are going to move forward with putting that into written ordinance form to bring back for consideration. And of course, this doesn't preclude additional comments. So if somebody wants to provide comments tomorrow or up to, 4 or 5 days, we'll be okay with that. Thank you, Chief Zenner, Lieutenant Williams, Director Karnowski, Director Badoon. I know Director Kramer was involved in this. I really can't even tell you how many people weren't involved in this. They were very thorough and very proactive in soliciting everybody's input because parking affects everybody. So thank you all, and we will bring it back in ordinance form in the near future. With that, our agenda is exhausted and we are adjourned at 7:59 for Finance. President Johnson, you have the floor.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.